a first live stream about doing business in Asia, and I want to introduce you to a friend of mine, Alex Lin. Hello, Alex.
Well, hi.
Yes, introduce yourself, please.
Well, hi everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. My name is Alex Lin. Right now located in Singapore, and what my role right now is basically I'm helping the university to doing commercialization. So I'm in the organization called NTUitive. Basically, is the innovation and enterprise company of the university NTU, Nanyang Technological University. So my current role is rather simple, but then I'm playing with a lot of interesting things. So I'm dealing with technology. I basically bring the technology from the university into the commercial space. And at the same time, I'm using the technology to build company because not all the technology are licensable. Some of the technology are a little bit too early, so we are building company with it. So there are technology company we are building in the area of blockchain, for example, you would be interested. In the area of space tech, also in farming, those kind of things. It's a broad spectrum. So at the same time, I'm building about 7 companies. We hire people, so it's literally a venture building. That means that we come up with the money, we come up with the people, we come up with the technology, and we have a horizontal so-called support infrastructure to just build right from the university. It's very, very different from what we do conventionally in terms of acceleration and incubation with the startup coming in. But of course, along the way, I'm also running some of the obviously acceleration program. But just that because we have the horizontal infrastructure, so we give the company a technology and a software team to build them along the way. So along the side, I'm also a family office. I run a family office, so I'm an investor also.
Okay, and my first question, what is entrepreneurship to you? How it's what is your vision for the Singaporean startup ecosystem right now, actually?
Yeah. Entrepreneurship is a very, very broad name. I mean, everybody will just get excited about talking about being entrepreneurs because they will think of the image of Google, Facebook, wearing T-shirt to work, that kind of things. But in actual fact, it's entrepreneurs is actually a lot of hard work that you are dealing with creating business. So entrepreneurs is literally you're talking about creating business. So I'm usually zoom back a little bit, talk about definition because
yes.
Entrepreneurs as well as innovation are really intermingling. Innovation to me is that taking the knowledge and then transfer into value, that means it's money. And entrepreneurship is the one who is doing it by building a company, taking knowledge and become a company. So that's entrepreneurship. And in Singapore context is that our roots, Singapore was a very small fishing town years ago, more than 50 years ago. And what we did is that we are a trading town. So that is where the entrepreneur root is, and we developed, become very professional, but our root is still very entrepreneurial. So we do have a lot of people, especially during the economic crisis. This is where everybody say, okay, let's go and build something. So that's the situation there.
What are the skills needed to be a Singaporean unicorn founder?
Well, we don't really look at unicorn because unicorn is actually very simple to be because so long you are able to continuously raise money. Right, so raising money is a very specific skill set. You are able to answer to the investor, you are able to tell him the story that he loves to hear, and you have an up rounds. So that is basically what a unicorn can be. But building a company is totally different thing altogether. So sometimes a CEO, when he's too engrossed in fundraising, the CEO have to run the company. And building a company is totally different thing because you're now looking at having a good market, able to achieve the traction, and able to pull the team together, especially nowadays we are talking about everything is technology. So you really need to find the talent, groom the talent, and secure the talent, and hold on to the talent. It's not easy. Right? After that, you have the technology, and eventually funding is actually the last of our concern down here. In Asia, especially, we are literally flush with cash. Just on Singapore alone, VC investment money, domicile on this island is more than $10 billion. The key question is that most of the entrepreneurs do not know how to pitch. So they are all concerned about their own company, who are they, versus that telling the investor what the investor wants to do. So there is a gap. There is a gap. I think entrepreneurs in Singapore, unicorn is not really what we're interested in. We're building a company that is sustainable. That is usually the concept of it.
What are the competitive advantage do you have right now in Singapore, and what ways can the business community and venture capital firms and government can help to the startups today during the pandemic?
Well, I think the pandemic is less of a concern because you always look for opportunity. If one thing go down, the other thing come up. So take for example that because of the pandemic, a lot of people stay at home, and the restaurant business is disrupted. So my own business itself, we are landlord, and our restaurant is empty. The guy cannot sustain. So we do very simple. We have moved them into a ghost kitchen. So in the ghost kitchen, and they start doing delivery, and they prosper again. So the people change, and they just have to adapt. The landlord business is dead, okay, at least for now. But the restaurant business survived, and they create a new one, the delivery service, and everything is on internet. And then you have to solve problem along the way because now your food is no longer so tasty and also presentable because the little pack in a lunchbox and then it being shaped along the way. It looks bad. So now you have to look at technology. How can you preserve the taste of the food along that maybe half an hour journey? So that is an improvement that is going along. So as far as the pandemic is concerned, we create a lot of new opportunity. It changed a lot of things. So as far as entrepreneur is concerned, we will constantly be able to create new things, right? So when we start looking back, is that the pandemic created a lot of opportunity. But what is one of the most important opportunities that currently created in Singapore? As I mentioned, there's a lot of fun. Is that it is not pandemic, but the conflict between the East and West. So imagine that in India, they are not allowed to take the Chinese money. So what does the company do? It's very simple. They will come over to Singapore, set up a factory, set up a company, and they accept investment coming in there. And then they use that to fund India. So that is basically a kind of opportunity that a neutral place like Singapore is able to do. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And based on the understanding of the Singaporean landscape and venture capital ecosystem, how has it changed over the last 10 years and during the COVID pandemic, and why?
Okay, the whole landscape constantly change. There isn't so-called a why. So Singapore started off as not a very good place to do startups because we have been trying. And a fundamental concept is that Singaporeans don't really like to do startups. It's literally a lot of hard work. So you really have to push them. Over the past 5-6 years, we have been doing a lot of product acceleration, get them excited, and so people accept that doing startup is a viable career. And that slowly change. It's a long journey to change all these things. So I wouldn't really say that it's people. Of course, the media and everybody only see the immediate changes, but the journey is very, very long, right? So.
Got it. And let's talk about technology. Where do you see the tech industry in enterprise, or maybe in Singaporean startup, going in the next few years, maybe like in perspective 2-3 years?
Okay, the next 2-3 years, I think what we will see, FinTech is still very big down here. I mean, like it or not, because we are a financial center, so FinTech is also a place that we encourage experimentation. But FinTech is taking a slightly different shape because that if you really look at how the FinTech landscape right now, what you are seeing is that they're literally serving the people with money, banks, and serving the bank. But chunk of the Southeast Asia of people are the unbanked and underbanked. So the whole of ASEAN, Southeast Asia, you have about 72% of people are unbanked and underbanked. These are the people that are doing, right? They don't have an ability to transact online. And a lot of time when you start talking about it, everybody says, oh yeah, they're looking at them, but nobody give them a solution. So everybody's just thinking of using a mobile phone and all these things, but you have to bear in mind that a lot of all these people don't have mobile phone. Right. So adoption is become an issue, and it poses another big issue. Issue number one is because these people are not being served, so they buy everything expensive, economy is going to be bad. Number two is that we do not know what these people are doing because there's no data. Currently, Google, Facebook, almost everybody dated for those people who are having a phone. But a lot of these people have no phone, no account. Right? So whatever simulation that Google, all these people can do is only doing that part of the work and not this unbanked and underbanked. And that poses a huge potential opportunity. And you can start doing a lot of analysis at what can that be done. So of course, the people talking about is a bottomless pyramid, and what we are seeing is that this is what the next 3 to 5 years will happen. All right, so for the FinTech space. The other space is actually on the food. All right, so people are now talking about how can food be sustainable, especially pandemic. It show everybody is that those that can export food start holding back. Those that have to import food, they are trying to figure out everywhere to buy. So in most countries right now, the government are the one who do the buying to stock up their reserve. It's just that this is behind the scene of this year. So there's a strong push for the next 3 to 5 years to build our own ability. So we call it a food sovereignty. It's not food sovereignty, but sovereignty, because you have to be able to control that. So this will be a two big areas that we are seeing emerging and coming up. Yeah.
Interesting. And what is the next big thing in space technology and machine learning, or maybe mostly artificial intelligence, plus healthcare? What's going on in medical technologies and maybe biotech? And plus, what do you think about future for the blockchain? And not like the finance technology, maybe decentralized finance.
Okay, so it's interesting that you mentioned about space. That is the area that most of the people are just only able to think, but not able to put the finger down to it. Now, what we are seeing, the space technology, is what we call a moonshot. So it will not happen in the next 3 years, 5 years, but it probably happen in about next 20 years. What I'm looking at is that 20 years, what can we do? Imagine that, okay, the scenario. Now, we know that in the microgravity space up in the sky, when you're manufacturing things, the quality and material is totally different. You can literally print stem cell up there, and it's stronger and more option up there. So now, in order for us to reach there, to build a factory up in the orbit, to do that, then you start thinking that there's a lot of things that you need. Number one, of course, is that you must have the full function system to be able to send things up there and cheaply. Currently, SpaceX is able to send about $25,000 per kilo. That's pretty expensive. In China, it's about $65,000 per kilo. So it's pretty expensive. If you really work on it and eventually drop it down to, let's say, about $1,000 per kilo, then you can massively send things up there and start assembling down there. Now, in order for you to build the factory up there, now you're talking about constellation. It's a software to manage all the things flying at the same time. So constellation is up there, but constellation is right now implementable on the drone, flying in formation. And microgravity 3D printing, I think that's a more or less stable already. But getting the material up there, now you're talking about the so-called material. Let's say you want to be able to just transmit only the DNA up there in digital form, and up there generate on the water and then start printing and then send it back. So these are the various technologies that will build up towards all the way up there. So including what you mentioned about the blockchain. The blockchain eventually used to secure the finance to build all these things. That's number one. And you talk about quantum about communication. How can you secure the communication from here down here and have almost instantaneous communications? So by having a one moonshot, which is what we are currently working on, is that, take for example, we will be able to do a lot of things along the way. So microgravity factory up there is one moonshot. How about mining on the moon, mining on asteroid? And that required digital mapping and everything, digital simulation.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things. I can talk for hours of this. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Let's move to the specific questions. For example, uh, for the millennials, if you were to open your own business in the future, for example, you're like a 25 years old guy from the Singaporean University, or maybe like after the MBA business school, and what is it should be? What kind of business, or maybe a sphere, or what is it? Why is business, or maybe something specific about technology?
Yeah. Okay, for the young people, especially the Singaporean graduates, the opportunity is not in the, I would say, the B2C market. Because it is a place that a lot of people are already seeing it. Technology is an enabler. Technology is available easily right now, especially on the island. And now you're talking about no-code movement. There are people who can code, build an app without coding. So that really a graduate in a good university in Singapore, there is no advantage down there because everybody can do it. So they have to start looking at where are the opportunities they can go. So my recommendation is always that go to a venture builder. Go to a venture builder to learn from there. Learn about business, learn about thinking, the process. Spend about 1-2 years filing and get exposed to the available technology. Now, for example, every year we spend $1 billion developing technology. And all these technologies are available, but most of the time people don't read them. They are paper, journal, publish, and all these things. Absorb all these things in, that is when you will see where are the opportunity. And then once you have a good enough moonshot ideas, with the technology you can easily build that, right? And the resources is all down there. The key question is always about what can you imagine? So the context is very different from anywhere else. Any other places, usually I will tell them and say, look, go into the market, start looking at what are the customer problems. But in next, the opportunity actually is a deep space and space tech, and you get the whole long thing to list down. Okay, building, for example, plantation up there. Those are the things that will attract the kind of investment that we can get.
And Alex, and same question for the guys like the 12 years old. Sometimes they talk about TikTok generation. What is your advice for the TikTok generation?
Well, they are born natural into that space. I won't say that there's advice for him. After all, I'm too senior and they probably won't listen to me. The key thing about the TikTok generation is that they love self-expression, which is good. I mean, that is very, very important because a lot of our current generation of entrepreneurs, they have no identity on the internet. So when they go out fundraising, the very first thing, you see, unlike you, that people know that your personality, you know that you run the TV, you know you're in the blockchain world, and you broadcast and do everything very quickly. People know who you are. But a lot of the entrepreneurs at this generation, when they go and raise money, the investors, the very first thing they do is that you Google, you check LinkedIn, blank. The investor can't do anything, right? You will just hold it back, okay. Were the investor willing to send a private investigator to check? Most of the time they don't. Right? So it's very important for them to learn how to build a very good online persona first. That persona can slowly change, but you need to have an online persona. An investor is not looking at the person that, oh, when you are young, you are silly and foolish. No. They just see that you have learned and grown along the way. And this is what your history is. This is what you have done. And by the whole thing, this is your curriculum vitae, your CV, your resume. And that is very important for that generation, for the TikTok generation. Build it up. Build it up. Even if you make mistake, that is okay. So that you will learn along the way. Now, once you have that identity, people understand who you are. And if you make it big, become a personality, whatever that you do, people recognize it. Right? So that is actually a very good foundation for them. Versus that older generation, which sometimes we call it a digital nomad. We don't even know about all these things. We have to hire people to manage our Twitter and LinkedIn profile, which can be very, very thick. So my advice to the young people is that, look, don't worry, build your identity first. And just get on. And by the time you're 20 something, you have enough knowledge, run into it, build something.
Thank you for your advices. And let's move to the second side. Let's talk about insights from this year and beyond next 15 years. What are the view of the next environment and special year vision for the future and tech investment trends? For example, maybe it should be something new in robotics, maybe in telehealth, maybe in next generation system for the DNA, maybe VR and AR, or maybe self-driving drivers, and plus green architecture, and new energy, green energy, and of course education, new technologies in education, because like it's COVID time, and maybe let's talk about what should be new for the people for the UN, because they have a specific goals, like sustainable goals and climate too. And what is what is it should be new, like the asset classes, digital classes maybe for the new managers and new enterprise companies after the COVID, because look at the startups. This startups was founded more than 10 years ago. It's Airbnb, it's Uber, and it's Slack, and Twitter, and it's like the same time right now. Let's talk about new technologies beyond like the 15 years.
Sure. Okay. I'll start from what you mentioned about the asset classes first, because that asset classes will eventually determine what we're going to develop along the way. Technology is just an enabler. What I'm seeing is that I'm increasingly seeing is that we are digitizing everything. COVID is a wonderful opportunity for us to start pushing everything onto digital. If we start looking at this, I'm staying at home. I mean, you are lucky you are able to go to the office. So the very important thing is that we no longer have the opportunity to sit down and sign contracts. And all the contracts are signed on things like DocuSign. And people accept that. So you begin to see that the administration of finance is going to go digital, not just within the bank, but without the bank outside. Right? So the banking services, or rather bank, become irrelevant, but banking services become very important. And everybody is doing. So Singapore are issuing license for people like doing super like Uber, Grab down here, and eventually they are able to become a bank because they have the community. Now they are not a bank, but they are offering banking services. So the technology become banking services. So that is the first part, and that will underpin how the future asset looks like, because that everything now becomes digital. So when we are having a digital, the concept everything synced in already, which is what the COVID enables us to do now. For example, that usually you will do an interview and I'll be sitting beside of you and we have a conversation. Right now, you are in New York, I'm in Singapore, 12 hours apart, and people accept that this is a normal way of meeting. Right? So that's a fundamental change, and people accepted it. So the digital will now naturally flow into the assets, which also means that the so-called assets, the valuable part is actually the contract. The only thing. And the contract is the one that becomes digital and it can be fractionalized. And you want to call it tokenized, and you want to call it cryptonized, it's the same, but basically fractionalized. And that allowed the distribution. So that is what the initial change. Now, when you are able to change that, the next thing you start looking at technology. Okay? So blockchain, the DLT enable that. But going further beyond that, I'm not looking at things that is next 3 to 5 years. We're talking about 8 years, 10 years. So in 8 to 10 years, there will be two major events. Event number one, climate. So Singapore likely, okay, the water level come up, the place will be too hot, or or whatever, no, it's not going to be so nice and livable. Then we have to find a way to live on this island because we can't move anywhere. So there are two alternatives for us. One is that we have a mass exodus to bring everybody to a nice climate island somewhere. Or we basically dig down, underground, or in the water. Now when you want to do that, the habitat is totally different. So that is where the investment will be. So now you talk about the moonshot is basically said, okay, I'm going to live underground. If I'm going to live underground, then how am I able to supply my food? So that is when we look at the alternate protein, container farming. So the recipe of growing all kind of food all underground. Right? So this is where the thing, okay, in order for me to dig further down, I need robots. How do I dig all these things? Right? And in order for me to do all these things, then before even I do, I need to be able to do simulation. So most of the time we think of AR, VR, but what we are thinking is slightly different, is what we call digital twin. I have a map of the place digitally. I will be able to think of how I'm going to construct. I will digitally move it. And in fact, the building can be constructed by robots. And robots just put in and they just do it on their own. Or maybe the operator is remote somewhere in the island. So in fact, this is what already happened in Singapore. The gas refinery and some of the factory, the control center is not on the island. I mean, it's not on the offshore island, but on the main island, where the operator is sitting in the aircon and start controlling everything. So that is a reality, but eventually we are talking about one is that climate, the second one is space exploration again. So space exploration, for example, if I want to explore mining on moon, again, the first thing is that I need to be able to map the whole thing. Right? I will send drone up there to map, take the videos and everything to map it. And the next thing is that once I have a high resolution picture, I can run simulation. I can run simulation about landing and run simulation about everything. And once I'm very certain, then I send my autonomous miner in down there. And I'll be sitting somewhere, either in Singapore remotely through quantum connection, and start mining them. And whatever they bring mine, those are the assets. What will they do? They will be fractionalized and become assets that people want to own in the digital world. So the whole one cycle this way, and that is the kind of future that we are looking at. So there's a lot of technology developed along the way, like what you mentioned about it. AR, VR, we don't call it AR, VR, we actually call it a digital twin. Right? You are literally the same. And I even go even one step beyond that what if digital twin of you, the human, where I can do drug trials using simulation. Although I think we're probably not able to do that for the next 5 years, but within the next 20 years, it is possible. Right? Once I'm able to dissect the DNA and all these things, I can literally do the drug trial on you, your model, and know what's the reaction. And this is important. Why is that so? Because if you are an astronaut flying far away, I have a digital model of you, and you are not well, I can run a simulation down here. And I can send a signal down there and say, this is the drug that you should take. All right? So versus that, a lot of things that we currently are not able to do. So these are the technology that's going to come up in the next probably 10 years. And these are the investment area that we are looking at. Yeah.
And I have a question about impact investment because it's look like the new asset class. And let's talk about what is the best post-COVID strategy for the investors, for the retail investors actually, and guys who want to invest in venture capital firms, or should stay in I don't know, a little bit in trading, or should stay in mostly in traditional asset classes. What is the best post-COVID strategy? What do you think?
Okay, traditional asset class, I think, is very, very confusing right now. You really look at stock and share, it's only the tech stock that is doing well. I mean, in the Nasdaq, we see the thing going up, but literally, it's only the few stocks that's going up, the rest of them are flat. So most of the people are not seeing it, but then we really analyze that situation. You look at the traditional asset class such as property, they are very, very confused, terribly confused. The retail space is totally destroyed. Okay, hotel and all these things, and literally they're not making money. But factory and warehouse, they're doing well. or even toll road. Okay, so the shift of it is begin to happen, right? So for a retail investor, a small retail investor, their best opportunity is actually hunt impact. I call it hunt impact because they're able to accumulate together as a sufficiently big fund, and that is when they get started. Because otherwise, they will be at the mercy of the big guy.
Yes, exactly.
And they will kill, right? So the only way they can do is actually work together, bunch together. So instead of forming a small $50 million fund, no, just have to go big. That is what we are seeing in the SPAC right now, special purpose acquisition vehicle. And that is what the trend coming. And they have to figure out how they can come into that space.
Yeah, interesting. And what is your advice for the startups who wanna go to the fundraise online?
Well, right now, I think a lot of them begin to
Yeah,
do
because sometimes the guys use Zoom actually too, and like they ask, could you please introduce to this portfolio investor, or maybe or what do you think? Because because this is completely different time, and some of our startups want to go and survive,
yeah.
want to go to the pilot or something like this. And what is your advice for the fundraise strategy?
I'm answering it in two parts. Okay, the first part is that as an investor in the early part of COVID, what we did is that we work with our startup. Basically, we have a few investors sit down together, look at all our portfolio. The reason for that is that because some of the company will not survive because the business is totally disrupted. There are people who are doing tour management, etc. Tour is not going to happen for the next 1 year, maybe 2 years. So you can't survive for that long. So we are literally asking this company to shut down. Right? So the answer is very simple. Okay, I know that you're not going to make it. Okay, you may still have a little bit of cash. Kill. So we literally do that. But why are we doing that is that we are keeping the talents. Keeping the technology, keeping the talent. So within a large collection of portfolio, we are able to basically distribute it. The entrepreneurs are not very happy about it. And you know the entrepreneurs are always very optimistic. You say, give me a little bit more time, I will still be able to do it. But hey, nobody's going to put money, it's going to die. So we are a little bit more mercenaries that we are basically consolidate everything. About 30% of our company was closed. And we distribute people. So the company, the surviving company becomes stronger and then we put the money in. Now, that poses one problem, okay? Some of the company because it's a group of investors, so I don't know some of the company. And exactly back to the TikTok story that you are asking, and all the people not online, and I have no chance to meet them during the period of time. So in Singapore, circuit breaker, we are although able to visit, but it's really kind of business meeting. So if they have an online persona, it will be easier for an investor to understand that. So for those people who are thinking of doing online fundraising, the very first thing they need to do is to really create the online persona for themselves, okay, and what they do, highlight the good part. If they just want to hire somebody to do it, or maybe hire you to help them to get hype up, come into your program and then introduce them. So they need that persona, they need that recognition. Case number one. Number two, also their company. We cannot be totally quiet if we know about you. And that is actually the kind of thing that they have to do in the very first thing. Once you have that, it's become investor will be interested. Investors are still deploying, so people like us are still deploying. So very important is that once you have that, the next thing is that you must be able to answer the investor need, because we are still looking for up round. In the pandemic situation, you can't do sales. What is your alternative for you to expand and scale? It's not about building and building, but how are you able to capture the market at this time? So when you answer that, okay, most of us will be very comfortable that I think you have a plan, you have a track record, I already know you already. Online or offline become irrelevant. But very important, let the people know you first. Yeah.
Interesting. Alex, I remember you studied in Stanford University, and you remember about Silicon Valley. What do you think? What's happened with Silicon Valley right now? And you advise, because of course people across the world, they want to collaborate together, like people from Asia, mostly from Singapore too, and guys from Switzerland maybe, and from like different cities in US too, and how we can
Mhm.
collaborate together, because or maybe there should be next Silicon Valley.
Well, everybody will always look for the next Silicon Valley. It is going to be difficult to find because that Silicon Valley is very, very unique. One,
Yeah,
that
I
you have,
know, I know.
you have a US as a big market, and it's homogeneous. You literally speak mostly English, maybe a little Spanish, but that is a whole market is homogeneous, and people think the same, talk the same because of their culture, right? They watch the same movie, so using a common currency. So that is what is unique about US. Now, by having the people target one place, you literally can spread, you can go very, very fast. So that is the advantage of being in the United States, not just the Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley, because we're very close to the
Yeah.
investor. So
Mm-hmm.
culturally, that you'll be able to play in that. Now, Europe, you get a little bit complicated, although you use a common currency, euro, but you multiple country, culturally different, and what's that? Language is different, and the tariff a lot of time, okay, the so-called regulation is very, very individual. So when you start looking at it, that add a layer of difficulty, but in general, the whole Europe, they are able to move around, right? It's a big enough market, more than 400 million population. But when we come to Asia, it becomes very fragmented. That is when we need to find commonality. Commonality is in the Southeast Asia, for example, we have 600, close to 700 million population, but with
Mm-hmm.
only about 40% of them are so-called the affluent one. And the affluent one is very common. You really look at them, their behavior is very similar. So they will be same thing, they will buy the same Louis Vuitton bag, they eat at fine dining, and most of them speak English. But beyond that is where I talk about unbanked and underbanked, they are fragmented.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So the what's it called, the collaboration will happen in the first part of the market first. And the first part of the market is common among the world. So a company that is dealing with the first part of the market, he can do very well in Asia, in Southeast Asia first, and he can now hop over to US to work together. Right, there's
Mm-hmm.
a collaboration opportunity, but you only have this part of the market. But the more interesting thing is that if you start looking at the second half of the market, although it's fragmented, but Indonesia alone is a big population
Yeah.
already, right? The people speak Bahasa, and then you target the market, which is kind of ignored for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And once you build that, similarly, they are all building on the same core we call bottom of pyramid. And this is a group of them is very similar to the India, part of the Middle East, and Africa. Right? So you literally have two type of market that you can explore collaboration. Right? So
Mm-hmm.
the top part, one is the bottom part. Eventually, the two of them will fuse together because of digital currency. Right? Once we have that, I think then we will be able to move very, very smoothly. But until then, I think we are still fragmented. Yeah.
And what is your advice for the startups who want to survive during the crisis? Mm-hmm. Hello. For the start.